Good evening to one and all. I hope I'm audible. I, Tripti Behel, Secretary Flow Uttarakhand, extend a warm welcome to all our office bearers, executive members, Flow members Pan India, and members of the community. I would like to welcome our eminent guest and speaker, Dr. Priya Virmani. A warm welcome to all. Before moving on, I would like to share a brief introduction about AMLUX. AMLUX, meaning Soul Luxury in French, brings together curated luxury travel experiences at exceptional prices. AMLUX holidays are those that encapsulate journeys of lifetime. It is for those who know the joy of travel and is equally for those who are yet to travel with travel. Being brainchild of Dr. Priya Virmani, a lady who has traveled extensively, solo and otherwise, and has discovered the power of travel to initiate a transformative process of self discovery. AMLUX takes its place to consciously encourage and guide travelers to make the sojourn from solo to soul. We welcome AMLUX once again on this journey today. Now, I would like to request our chairperson, Ms. Komal Batra, to please take it forward.
Thank you so much, Tutti. Welcome, everyone. Flow Uttarakhand this year has launched the Business Agron series, under which we cover various aspects of our business that upskills our personality or our business assets. Under the same, today we have Dr. Priya Virmani with us, who is going to share the timeless knowledge from the Gita that has been available to us. And one fascinating thing about Gita is that it brings out a different lesson each time you read it, adjusting, accommodating to the situation that you are in, whether it is in your personal life or it is in your professional space. Her expertise on the Vedic insights will help us to understand which parts of the Gita we can incorporate in becoming a better person with communication amongst ourselves or even with our colleagues, our employees, for that matter, even into our relationships. A better person for self-management and people's management. With this, I welcome Dr. Priya Virmani, and I would like to introduce her in the most humble way that I can. There's so much that we can speak about her for the work that she does, but here's just a small introduction. Dr. Priya Virmani is an author, a political and economic analyst, a disruptive social entrepreneur, a TED speaker, the CEO of luxury travel publication AMLUX, a well-being specialist, and a passionate advocate for women's issues. She is also the founder and director of Paint Our World, a humanitarian project that works to rehabilitate underprivileged children who have suffered trauma and abuse. Dr. Priya Virmani is a TEDx speaker and has given talks in India, China, the USA, the UK, Ireland, Austria, Malta, Puerto Rico, in addition to several conferences across the world. As a political economic analyst, she contributes to BBC Radio and writes publications across the globe, including The Guardian and The New Statesman in London, UK. She contributes to politics and economics panels on TV channels, including NDTV and India Today. She has won multiple awards, including the She Inspires Award in the UK in 2019, Promising Indian Award for Social Activism in India in the same year, and the iconic Woman Creating a Better World for All in recognition of all the illustrious work that she does. With that, I once again humbly welcome Dr. Priya Virmani and hand over the podium to her. Welcome, Dr. Priya. Priya, you have to unmute yourself.
Thank you so much, Komal, not just for this introduction, but for being such a powerful instrument in bringing together and creating, enabling, healing, and empowering spaces. That's what your energy is all about. And may you radiate that and infect as many of us as possible along your journey. Thank you once again, Komal, to you and to each participant who's joined today. I look forward to a very meaningful journey with each of you in the next hour. Before I begin, I'd just like to say the warmest namaste. The highest in me bows to the highest in each of you. From London, where I am, it's a beautiful, glorious summer's day today. And here's radiating that light, which we will then go on to, encompass the light of the Gita as well and the knowledge enshrined within. Before we turn to the Gita, I'd like to begin with an invocation. An invocation is a mantra that works within us. So, mantras or chants have a vibrational frequency that is meant to lift our own, and this is how they are so powerful. The chant that I would like to begin with is called Asatoma Sadgamaya Tamasoma Jyotirgamaya Mrityorma Amritam Gamaya, which means from darkness, lead me to light, the light that is within each of us. From untruth, the untruths of the excesses of human nature, lead me to the truth of the essence of the soul, where we can take a bird's eye view on things and not get trivial about life and everyday life. And finally, from death, death is when we allow again the excesses of human nature to overtake us, to immortality, the immortality of knowing that we are the soul, we are the energy that comes from the Paramatma or the Supreme Soul. And energy, as even physics and science says, can neither be created nor destroyed. So I would like each of you to take that minute. Let's come together, close our eyes, go within, and work with this chant. Komal, could you play the chant, please?
असतो मा सद्गमय तमसो मा ज्योतिर्गमय मृत्युर्मामृतं गमय ॐ शान्ति शान्ति शान्ति.
Thank you. And now turning to the Gita. Let's begin with the very word Bhagavad Gita. Anyone know what the Bhagavad Gita means, if you can please respond in the chat by typing, as you all are muted. What does the word Bhagavad Gita mean? Any responses in the chat? Can you all hear me? You can hear me? The word Bhagavad Gita means the song of God. And what is meant by Krishna using Arjuna as a metaphor for humanity and giving us this sacred holy text, which is actually a map and a philosophy of life to help us navigate through the intricacies, through the twists and turns, through the vicissitudes of life, help us navigate through human nature, that of ourselves and that of everyone around us. What the Bhagavad Gita is actually saying is the song of God is man, is you, is me. Each of us is the song of God. As the Bible says, in the Bible as well, that the kingdom of God is within man, that we are a creation of the highest supreme power, the creator. And therefore, that energy, that wisdom, that power that is in the creator, in the supreme Paramatma, is in each of us. So we are the song of God. So what the Gita does by its very name, which is called the nomenclature Bhagavad Gita, is it brings humanity and divinity as one. As Swami Vivekananda said, each one of us is potentially divine. That potential is bridged by the knowledge enshrined in the Bhagavad Gita that gives us a map and manual of how to move from a space of where we are to a space of greater realization of the divinity within each and every one of us. Coming to leadership, because today is about leadership lessons enshrined in the Bhagavad Gita. I would like to ask you, I can't see everyone's video here. So again, if you can just please in one word reply in the chat, how many of you see yourselves as a leader? If you see yourself as a leader, just put there yes. If you don't, put there no. Just like you to put a yes or a no in the chat box. I see yes, yes, yes. Lots of yeses there. Awesome. And can I ask who you are leading? If any of you can type who you are leading. You could just, it doesn't have to be names, just, Komal, myself, Charu, myself, absolutely. So the Bhagavad Gita begins its management speak by speaking about self-management. Because when he dispenses the knowledge to the greatest warrior of the time, Arjuna, on the battlefield of Kurukshetra, Lord Krishna does not instruct Arjuna how to be the greatest army general or how to be, the greatest leader in any given setting. What he does is he teaches Arjuna how to manage his own emotions, his own perspectives, his own thinking about life and about his role and purpose in this journey called life. So yes, each and every one of us is a leader because we begin by leading ourselves. The greatest leaders are those who have the insight to first manage themselves best and therefore begin the leadership process from self-management. So with the Gita, what the Gita does is it's different from every other religious text in the world. There is one main primary seminal difference, different from the Bible, the Quran, the Torah, Buddhism, Jainism. There is one fundamental difference. Would anyone like to try and attempt in the chat what that difference is? What is the key difference between the Gita and all these other religious texts that are part of our human inheritance? So the one striking aspect about the Bhagavad Gita is it was not dispensed. Yes, absolutely, Charu. It was not dispensed in peacetime. It was unlike Lord Buddha, who left life, who saw life, everyday man-made worldly existence as bondage. He left that and he retreated into the depths of the forest to then go within. The Gita says, right here, right now, in this battlefield of Kurukshetra, in the sight of struggle and absolute bhayankar, जिसे हिंदी में कहते हैं, absolute war, right here, the journey of self-discovery will begin. And with the most of us, you will see, we often don't have that option or that luxury to retreat into a forest like Buddha. We are here with everyday conflicts, challenges, responsibilities. We have families, we have roles that we have to execute. And there the Gita relates to us so powerfully by saying, in this space of struggle, you are navigating a divorce, you are navigating bringing up a special child, you are navigating your own mental health issues. In these war spaces, the war spaces might be various for each of us, but in this space itself, enlightenment, the journey of self-discovery, the journey of understanding ourselves better and powerfully, and our role in the world begins. So in Sanskrit or Vedic philosophy, what we say is the Gita shifts from looking at dhyana, which Buddhism says meditation, which is close your eyes and go within, to darshan. Darshan is open your eyes and savor. From the strife without, from the strife by without, I mean outside the external circumstances and realities. From there, start your journey within to get that insight from within you. Even when Lord Krishna shows his ultimate energetic form to Arjuna, called his Vishwaswarup on the battlefield, even then he tells Arjuna, "Oh Arjuna, open your eyes and see me in my fullest form." His fullest energetic form, which encompasses every atom, subatom, milliatom of creation. All our emotions, our feelings, our journeys, our processes, different forms of creation, whether it's animal or plant, whether it's sun or moon, whether it's day or night, all of that is encompassed in that one cosmic form, which Lord Krishna shows Arjuna as his Vishwa Swarup. Why is the Vishwaswarup so powerful and so important? How can it apply to leadership right here, right now, in the 21st century where we are? Like a parent does for their child, a child knows whatever a child does, there is always a come back to the parent because the parent has his or her back. Lord Krishna does the same with Arjuna. He tells Arjuna that I will not even fight, I will not pick up a single weapon, I will just be your charioteer. And just the charioteer was all Arjuna needed. It is all that each of us needs, this sense of faith and complete belief that the universe or God has our back. Operate from this space of faith and see what a strong psychological infrastructure that can build within us. When Krishna was dealing with Arjuna on the battlefield of Kurukshetra, in Arjuna, what did we see before the Mahabharata war? We saw the greatest warrior with the most unflinching focus. His focus was infallible. When, as little princes, Arjuna, together with his brothers and his cousins, they were lined up, that very famous story which we've all heard and told our children, and through the generations, they were lined up, and their Guru Dronacharya, is teaching them warfare and teaching them archery, and asks them to, as their nishana, or as their goal, that they have to hit a bird on a tree. And he asks each of these little princes what they see. The answers the princes give are various. Someone says, I see the leaves, the tree, the branch. Someone says, the sky, the bird. It was only Arjuna who said, Gurudev, or teacher, the only thing I can see is the eye of the bird. Everything else blocked out. His focus was so acute, so perfect. That same man today, when faced in front of his family members who raised him, in front of his cousins, in front of his guru who taught him the entire vocabulary of warfare, today he loses all emotional perspective and he's beside himself. He's distraught. He's lost. Emotional intelligence is something that is just not coming to this greatest of warriors. That's when Lord Krishna makes an intervention. That's when faith is instilled in Arjuna in a way that you are able to, as a leader, take the bird's eye view in life and understand you are part of a higher energy and part of a process which leads to a higher purpose. And that's what gives us the energy, the insight, the might, the psychological rootedness to stay on our course and complete our roles as leaders, irrespective of the challenges that come our way. Faith changes us. It makes us way more psychologically immune to the ups and downs and the everydayness of life. So here, right from a time where we applaud Arjuna for focus, we see him lost. Doesn't that happen with the best of us, where our skill is supreme, but yet emotionally, when we are faced with loved ones, when we are faced with those who we have given that space and power to hurt us because of our attachment, we feel that, we are completely distraught and pulverized. That's when knowing that there is a higher force, or whether it is your own belief in yourself that has your back, that you have as your point to return to, can be the strongest space for any human being, every leader, to operate from. So, what does Arjuna then do? There is a word that is very popular in the 21st century in business terminology. That word is outsource. We outsource our processes. We outsource. So all the call centers of companies in the West, all the IT backends, all that is outsourced to India. All that is outsourced to the East. I'll take the word outsourced from this terminology, add a lot more power to it coming from faith, and the word then becomes surrender. When you feel in your journey as a human being and then as a leader, a certain heaviness in life, that things are overwhelming you, they're becoming greater than your ability to handle them. When you feel such, may not be the fact that you actually can't handle it, but I'm sure everyone has gone through times where you feel your ability to handle a situation is not that strong, you're overwhelmed, um, you're unable to reach out to those you love, you've tried your best, you can't change people, you understand that external realities are not in your hands. We've all been through in the global pandemic the last 2 years because of COVID. I, for one, feel that my life has completely changed. Had COVID not happened, I would have been on a completely different trajectory in many different ways. So we all feel that these things are thrown at us, and we feel, are we Jesus Christ, and do we have the ability to carry such heavy crosses? Jesus Christ didn't ask us to be on the cross, but he said he got on the cross as a metaphor to release us of our, punishment to sin. The Gita tells Arjuna, when Arjuna is overwhelmed on the battlefield of Kurukshetra, that's when Lord Krishna shows his ultimate energetic form of the Vishwaswarup to tell Arjuna, I am right here. I am your Sarthi. I am your charioteer. All I need you to do is look to me and surrender in my name. Just try the process of surrender. Experiment with it and see how powerful the results can be. Surrender is almost like you have a computer or your phone where your memory is clogged, and then the processing power goes down. It gets stuck, it freezes, it hangs. Try and clearing and decluttering all that you have, clearing some of the memory, and then see how much better it works. Once you decide to surrender those extras, you realize whatever you are dealing at hand, you are more present, more mindful in a present way, not mindfull. Your mind is less full, and therefore you are able to be more mindful and present in the situation. Surrender may not mean that an outside focus or God will actually come and say, okay, all these jobs that you haven't done, Komal or Priya, I'm going to take care of you. But I'm going to take care of those jobs, sorry. But what surrender will do is surrender, as Gita says, the word Bhagavad Gita, that we are the song of God. Surrender will enable that song of God within us to shine through, to come across as powerfully, as mindfully, and help us to realize who we really are. Surrender means we are less clogged, we are less heavy, no excess baggage. So we're not paying for excess baggage at the airport. That's taken care of. So the bags that we have, we can travel best with them. We can handle what we have with greater calm, greater ease, greater presence, greater clarity. Another word for spirituality, a synonym, is clarity. When you operate from a space of clarity, that space starts becoming a divinely inspired space. And to reach the space of clarity, we keep needing to shed off or surrendering things that we have done our best with, we have thought through, but then we feel are beyond our control. Very little is in our control. Even when we comb our hair every day, is it in our control how many strands of hair fall? But yes, yet Brahma who is known to be the creator, and the word Brahman comes from the human mind. It means the human mind. That is where we can exercise some practice, some training, some control. So let's put our focus and our faculties in that space. Another aspect of outsourcing, I'd like to speak, and surrender, I'd like to speak about the example that probably Many of us, probably all of us, have at some point come across, which is the story of Draupadi. What happens to Draupadi when her husbands stake her in a game of dice and lose her? What happens to her when the people she has trusted most and those who are there to protect her are the ones who actually stake her and therefore lead her open to her humiliation and violation? Has that happened with any of you? Those you've trusted most intimately, most intensely, at the point when you are most vulnerable, when delivery was most essential, they have let you down. What does Draupadi do? In her rage, in her utter helplessness, in her hopelessness, in her vulnerability, in her humiliation, what does she do? She takes these entire gamut of complex, difficult emotions, channels them into single minded focus and devotion on Krishna. The disrobing is nothing but a metaphor. Each one of us goes through disrobing in life, just that our disrobings are various. At this point, if we can lead by taking all our complex, difficult, rightful, Draupadi is right to feel enraged, she is right to feel helpless and hopeless. But if we can take them all and we can focus them on knowing that the song of God is within us, that grace is within our reach and within our own activation. If we can enable this, just see how our lives start to turn, how they start to shift, how the working space, the working energy space, when we shift that within ourselves, which is what Draupadi did, you will see how grace will start lifting you out of situations of disrobing, just like it did with Draupadi. Just like it did with Draupadi. I hope each of us is able to relate to the metaphor, the very powerful metaphor of Draupadi's disrobing. I feel it's probably the most powerful metaphor that exists in our stories, in our religious texts, in our mythology, however you'd like to look at it. There are several powerful metaphors, but this one is, I mean, I could do a few sessions just on the disrobing of Draupadi and what our takeaways from that are, what our learnings are from that. So if we can understand that disrobing as something that started from a space of difficult, deep, negative emotions, which were not in Draupadi's control. She was affected, as we say that, I was at the wrong place at the wrong time, or what was my karma? What is my doing in this? Not immediately of her control at all. It was her husband's, it was the social structure at the time, it was the rules at the time, societal rules. It was nothing of her doing. Yet, in the midst of all those constraints, she was able to bundle everything up and just channelize it into that single minded focus on the power of surrender or outsourcing to grace and allowing that grace to overtake our lives. In India, often people say, talk about nazar lag gayi hai, and people say there are negative emotions or nazar lag gayi hai. And I often say, I'm not too sure about, the entire science of nazar, but yes, there is negative energy and there is power, positive energy. But I do know that the power of grace is greater than the power of all these other nazars or energies combined. Just try it. I, in my life, at times, have been able to tap into grace, and I've seen how that has transformed my ability to handle the different disrobings I have been through. And I have also had times when I've not been able to tap into grace and I've been distraught, overcome by being distraught. And I've seen how my power to handle situations, my battery charge has gone down as a result of it. This was a very powerful point and concept of outsourcing or surrender as being a great leader to yourself and others through life. At this point, I'd just like to pause for a couple of seconds and also ask Komal or anyone else if there are any questions or thoughts or suggestions at this stage. If not, I will continue with the next aspect of leadership from this beautiful song of God that is each of us, that is the Bhagavad Gita.
So, Priya, I think we can continue and we'll have the question and answers towards the end altogether so that we have this momentum going. Thank you.
Thank you. Another aspect, very powerful, that the Gita and the Mahabharata together show us is the importance of understanding human nature, each other, stories, and contexts holistically as a whole. And therefore, when you understand each other as a whole and you know the struggles and vulnerabilities of each one, our compassion and empathy for each other should go up, not down. And if we have compassion and empathy, if I see Komal or Annie or Usha auntie as a part of me, then I don't believe that we really need to teach each other morality. Morality then becomes redundant. Why are we so unconditional and so giving to our children? Because we see our children as a part of ourselves. Just imagine if in this world we could extend that thought process to others too in the Vasudeva Kutumbakam way, which is taken from Vedic philosophy, which means the world is one family. And the world is one family. And another word for Vasudeva Kutumbakam, according to me, is universe. What does universe mean? Uni, one, a verse, that each of us is connected because we come from the same energy. Each of us goes back to earth, dust, and ashes and has various experiences along this journey. During the course of these experiences, if we could connect with each other with this understanding, with this compassion of being part of the uni or one verse, or Vasudeva Kutumbakam, just imagine how it would transform the journey of life, how pleasant it would make life for each and every one of us to know we are part of a support structure and a support system that includes compassion and empathy in abundance from each other, giving it and receiving it. And here, to elucidate understanding holistic stories, I want to look at a very popular, famous, infamous story from the Mahabharata, that of the most infamous and notorious Mama in our culture, Shakuni Mama. We all know Shakuni Mama, yeah? What is he known for? How would you describe him? Can anyone type in the chat just in one word? One word. What? When you think of Shakuni, what comes to mind? What do you think of? Just one word. Can you just type in the chat? Do you all have access to the chat? Cunning, yes, absolutely. Clever, totally. Cunning again. Deviant. So I've got clever, cunning, deviant. So these are synonyms that are selfish. Selfish. I'm going to hang on to that especially closely. All the others, but selfish. And I'll take the liberty to share Shakuni's backstory with each of you. Before I do that, I'd like to say there are more than 34,000 recorded versions of the Mahabharata. And the South Indian versions and the Oriya versions are the ones that look at Shakuni's character more holistically than the Northern Indian ones. So, taking from those versions, I want to tell you about Shakuni's backstory. Shakuni has a backstory, and his backstory is that his sister Gandhari was married to the Kuru king Dhritarashtra. And it was Bhishma Pitama, or the grandsire of the Kuru household, who kind of arranged and oversaw and orchestrated that marriage. Now, after Gandhari and Dhritarashtra got married, Bhishma Pitama learned that Gandhari was actually a widow. Now, how she was widowed is, as we say in your marriage patri, you could be Manglik, and Aishwarya Rai was Manglik, so she first married a tree and then divorced the tree, so the Manglik effect is then removed, and then she married Abhishek Bachchan. So, similarly, with Gandhari, she had certain astrological permutations and combinations that were not auspicious for marriage. So she first married a sheep. Then she divorced this sheep, which means she was a divorced woman, or the story, some of the stories say the sheep was killed, which means then she was a widowed woman. And then she was available for her second marriage. So Dhritarashtra was her second husband. When Bhishma Pitama gets to know this, he is incensed that this information was withheld from him and he was kept in the dark, and he feels he was, misled and lied to. After they got married, also, there was a common tradition in the royal households of the time that the in-laws, the marital family of the woman, unlike in today's day and age, the marital family would call the bride's family, so Gandhari's family, over and splurge their hospitality on the bride's family. So Bhishma Pitama calls after the wedding Gandhari's family, which includes Gandhari's father, who was the king of Gandhar, princely kingdom of Gandhar, and Gandhari's brothers, the eldest of which was Shakuni, but she had many brothers. Bhishma Pitama does this out of spite and vengeance, and he wants to punish them and take revenge for what he feels was a gross misleading. When he invites them to the Kuru household, how he chooses to punish them is every day, instead of lavishing his hospitality on them with abundant food, he decreases the amount of food he gives to the entire Gandhar clan, to a point where they were literally starving. It was also the ritual of the time, or the tradition of the time, that you could not leave the household, your daughter's household. So Gandhari's father has come to his daughter's household now, marital home. You cannot leave the marital home till you are asked to leave. So Bhishma Pitama does not ask them to leave, but he tortures them by decreasing the portions of their meals every single day. It reaches a point where they don't have enough to sustain themselves, and they all add up their food, and whatever food, the cumulative effect, they give that to Shakuni because they choose to keep Shakuni alive. They choose to keep Shakuni alive. The Gandhar king does that because he tells Shakuni, I am entrusting you with the role to take revenge and destroy this Kuru family for how they have humiliated us and literally killed us. You all know that Shakuni walks with a limp on his leg. You know why he walks with a limp on his leg? One day when he was walking and his father and his brothers were on the brink of starving to death, his father takes a chain and whips his ankle. Shakuni screeches in pain and looks to his father and says, he's totally aghast. And his father responds and says, that is to give you a permanent limb, so that with each and every step, you are reminded of your sole purpose to be alive. So then, was Shakuni selfish? Or was he an obedient son who watched his own father and his own brother in front of his eyes starve to death, be starved to death in a household that was otherwise abundant with everything, in a princely, kingly household? Was he then selfish to live the rest of his life with the only goal of avenging and seeking justice for how his brothers, each of his brothers and his father was killed? Do you know why the dice that Shakuni rolls can never lose? He has got that boon or that blessing from his father because the dice were made with his father's bones. And his father said, every time you play with this dice, you will never lose. Whichever number you want will come. This dice or these dice are blessed with all the power and energy that I have to enable you to seek justice for how we were killed in this Kuru household. And nobody knew about it then. They weren't allowed to speak about it because it would have brought shame on Shakuni's sister, the queen of Kurukshetra now, who was the princess of Gandhari. So they didn't want dishonor and shame on their family. So they had to look for a more insidious, more covert way in which they could take revenge. I'm sure that's happened with all of us, where we look at what the repercussions would be for honor, for respect, for how society will see us, for judgment, and therefore we seek alternative ways to redress a problem, to solution find. So now when you know the backstory of Shakuni, is he still the most cunning, the most deviant? Or now do you feel a sense of almost pity? Is he a victim or is he a villain? Really? Is he really the villain? Or is he really a villain, a victim actually disguised as a villain? So that's what you need to do as a leader. We need to have the compassion to want to understand the backstories and people more holistically, and to understand yourself. This understanding begins with understanding ourselves with greater compassion. How often do we speak to ourselves in a way that we would never speak to our best friend or our family or people who came to us for advice? How often would we speak to ourselves with the same kindness? Maybe make that a common practice, that we speak to ourselves with kindness and with compassion and with love and with goodness. So that understanding begins with self-awareness of our own backstories, our own struggles, our own judgments, our own conditioning that we have picked up from society, that inform or that help us with the stories we tell ourselves about ourselves, of what we are, what we are not, what we should do, what we shouldn't do, how we should be, how we shouldn't be, and the stories that we don't have the courage to admit are probably not right conditioning for us. I would like you to just take a few seconds to take on board the power of understanding ourselves first and then extending that space to others holistically. And then you see the balance sheet of a person. When you are leading a business, do you look at the losses only or the profits only? Often relationships go asunder because when a man is wooing a woman, you just see the profits in the business or in the account. He doesn't select to show you the losses. We don't select to show ourselves to each other more holistically unless we develop more meaningful connections over time. As a leader, we need to encourage a space that will facilitate this understanding within ourselves and others. That's when we reach a point where we are acing leadership, and leadership that enables a lift of us. And as we lift ourselves, others are lifted with us to realize our higher selves. Let this seep in, percolate about how powerful our holistic stories are to enable empathy between us. Komal, I'd just like to ask you, how much time do I have left, please?
A couple of more minutes.
Right. So I would like to end by the power of a small anecdote, the power of being in the present. Gita talks about that. By default, it's asking Arjuna not to look at the outcome of the war, though Krishna may be fully aware of it. But he's asking Krishna's asking Arjuna to be present right there, right now, and to be able to handle his emotions and manage his emotions. It's really a book of emotional management and human nature. And the moment you're able to emotionally manage and handle human nature, you see that the rest of life, the different parts of the jigsaw puzzle of life fall into place with greater ease and with grace without your trying so hard. So, by being in the present, from Krishna's life itself, Krishna knew the future. He knew everything that was to happen. Of course, he knew the past. And yet, he lived every moment giving it its fullest. If you and I knew that a business we are starting is going to fail, would we be able to give that business our fullest? That's Krishna consciousness. That's Krishna energy. That's the power of the Gita. I'll end with a very simple anecdote. A story, you may have come across it before. There is a deer in the forest who is heavily pregnant and she wants to give birth. Just as she makes a mount for herself and tries to settle down to give birth, she sees that on her right hand side there is a raging forest wildfire. In front of her, she sees a hunter with a bow and arrow. And behind her, she sees a lion fully ready to prey on her. I don't know if you may have felt such in life, where you are not just against the wall, but cornered by a wall entirely. Many of us have over the global pandemic. I for sure have. What does the deer do? The deer realizes there is no escape for her. Whichever direction she goes, she is doomed. Yet, in that complete doom, she still sits down as an impending mother with the hope and the action of giving birth, which is all she can do at that time to stay in the eye of the storm. What happens? Thunder, torrential downpour, the wildfire is completely quenched. The thunder and lightning disorient the lion, get the hunter to immediately come to his wits. The hunter kills the lion, and the deer is successfully, peacefully, in safety and security, able to give birth. often in life, the best we can do is be fully present where we are. Even as leaders, for our lives and for others, we may have directions, we may have roadmaps, we may have purposes, we may have visions, we may have missions, we may have goals. But life and its challenges will keep getting us to maneuver that at best, if not derail us or shift our focus. Yet, at those times, while we have the roadmap of every step we are taking in the journey where we need to be present, if that one step goes wrong because we are not present and we injure ourselves in any way, I'm using injury as a metaphor, then our ability to take the next step for that journey ahead is also hindered. May we all be on a journey of Krishna energy and Krishna consciousness, where no matter what life throws at us, we have the abilities to understand ourselves and our own stories more fully. We have the power of faith to know that we are the song of God, to outsource and surrender what is really heavily weighing us, and also to be fully present and handle life to the fullest. And in the process, we by default start realizing our highest and best selves. Thank you, Komal, once again. Thank you, Vicky. Thank you, Vicky Flo Uttarakhand. Thank you to each and every one of you for being part of this journey with me today. Namaste from London. The highest in me bows to the highest in each and every one of you. Thank you.
Thank you, Priya, so much. This was certainly a different perspective of how we know the Mahabharata and the Gita. We've watched the series on televisions, various versions of it, read our own little story pockets, and yet each time, like I said at the beginning of the webinar, it brings out a different perspective and a different understanding of the same story, of us identifying with one of those characters. Sometimes we are the pregnant deer, sometimes we are the hunter, sometimes we are the lion. And each situation brings out a different learning in that moment for us to learn and enact. As I open up this platform for question and answers from the audience, I encourage everyone to not just raise questions from what Priya just shared, but if there is a particular situation in your management, in your life, and if there's an insight you wish to have, please raise your hands or type your name in the chat box and we shall unmute you to ask that question. Till that happens, Priya, I would like to ask a question. We spoke about Shakuni. We brought out his loyal son aspect. And we spoke about the humility that was picked up as revenge to be met out. We did cover that aspect and we empathize with that situation. But is that the correct format to lead life with, to be revengeful and move forward and pull down someone? Or must we look at ourselves and learn a lesson from the past without repeating the same mistake? For we do understand that the result of the Kauravas, the 100 sons, was also death.
That's such a powerful, pertinent question. Thank you for asking it. I wanted to look at this as well. So, time wise, and you've allowed me the space to do that in questions. Clearly, when we repeat this, call it tit for tat, call it spite, revenge, resentment, vindictiveness, where we repeat this energy, the negative energy coming to us, and we, want to return it back. The process is unpleasant. is painful, is difficult for everyone, the giver and the receiver. You can check this with your life. Check when you've tried to give it back to someone else or someone else has tried to give it back to you. Has the process been pleasant? The ego may have at some points felt reinstated, but has the experience of the process been pleasant or positive or powerful or lifting? You wouldn't tick those boxes. And the end result is often tragic. Of course, Shakunis was to another scale. We might find the Shakuniness, spitefulness, and tit for tat approach in smaller ways in our enacted in smaller ways in our everyday lives. So this is why, because they chose to respond and retaliate with that same energy, we saw where that went to. That went to the complete apocalyptic road crash of the Mahabharata and the Kurukshetra war. Had they at that point been able to take a bird's eye view, which is what Krishna energy and Krishna consciousness is all about, the entire story of the Mahabharata would have changed. And therefore, when they ask what actually led to the Mahabharata war, how far do we go? Was it this incident that then led to the war so many years later, a full generation later? You know, where does is the reason really the animosity between Duryodhana and the Kauravas and the Pandavas, or does it go way back in history? That's when we talk about intergenerational trauma. We talk about families perpetuating unhealthy energetic patterns. How far does the toxicity, some of the toxicity that we are carrying consciously, unconsciously, subconsciously, and perpetuating, how far back is its origin? And that is never, that energy is never the way to break or change a negative pattern, never the way to solve a problem that is for the best of yourself and those around you, never for the larger good and your own good. As Albert Einstein, I think, is known to have popularly said, that the energy that causes a problem can never be the energy that solves a problem. So we can't keep perpetuating the energy and expecting an outcome that is lifting, life affirming for ourselves and humanity. It's not going to happen. The only way is breaking the cycle. And because Shakuni and his family took this ahead, we reached a battlefield that saw destruction at a historic level at those times. Any more questions from anyone?
Thank you for sharing that. We have our past president, Miss Usha Agarwala ji, with us. Usha ji, may I request you to please unmute yourself and share your insights and your views on today's program. And if you have a question that Priya may address, please. Thank you.
Usha auntie, thank you so much for joining. Such a joy to see you here.
You were really great, and it's so nice to see you here. And I just wanted to, I mean, my same question is that when did this incident happen? You know, like you said regarding Shakuni. I'm not able to follow, like what you said, that how the family came to Kuru Vansh, to, like you said, that they were ill-treated.
Yes.
So how did this happen, like sort of?
So that time it was a custom that after, in the royal households, after the princes and kings would get married, the boy's family would invite the girl's family over और उनकी खातिरदारी करते थे, जिसे हम कहते हैं, lavish their hospitality on them. It was a custom, रीति रिवाज था उन दिनों में. So when they invited Shakuni's family over, Shakuni's father, Shakuni and his brothers, that's when Bhishma Pitama wanted to take revenge and wanted to kill the entire Gandhar clan, to take revenge for the fact that they lied to him about Gandhari. He felt really misled. So Bhishma Pitama, who we lift at such a high pedestal in a lot of the interpretations, there are some interpretations that say, was he the one who was actually responsible for perpetuating the Mahabharata war because of how he treated the Gandhar princes and the Gandhar king. And then Shakuni, because his only Gandhari wasn't aware of his intentions, but then Shakuni's only intention was to destroy the Kuru clan. So the best way he could do this was to groom his nephew who was heir to the throne. So he groomed his nephew in a way that he created a, what they say, rift or vibhajan between the family, between the Pandavas and the Kauravas. So you will see that Usha auntie happening in families right till today.
Yes.
That's why
Yes,
the
yes,
Mahabharata is so powerful, because it looks at human nature not for just that time but for all ages. It's applicable to ourselves and our situations now as much as it was then. कितने families में ये process अभी तक हो रहा है और चल रहा है.
But I still can't understand because, I mean, this was not such a big thing, like, like for Bhishma Pitama to, take such a action, like,
Absolutely.
I mean, seeing that his nephew was blind, I mean,
Yes.
and then, I mean, he also didn't tell that he was blind. So, I mean, I don't know. It's very difficult to
Yes.
understand. But
No, Auntie, you are absolutely correct that it seems a very trivial reason for
yes,
him
yes,
to extract their lives, but this is what
yes,
he did. Doesn't it happen often in life that you feel
yes.
कि छोटी चीज का पतंगर बना रहे हैं and with serious consequences? His ego was so hurt. He couldn't accept it.
That's
And so
true.
he went all out. So the South Indian text, like the Tamil version of the Mahabharata, the Uriya version, they explain this in at length in a lot of detail. The other versions, the North Indian version, also includes it, but not with the same level of detail and space that the Eastern versions and the Southern versions of the Mahabharata in India talk about it.
And this was an eye opener. I mean, we had really not heard about it. So, this was very interesting.
There are many such stories, Auntie. The Mahabharata has 100,000 verses, and even that is supposed to be the abridged form, because the mythology is that Lord Ganesha is the one who, sat down and wrote, and then he didn't remember it all, so he just wrote 100,000 verses. So even that 100,000 verses, that there's a story behind how the Mahabharata was forgotten and only a shorter form of it has been handed down to us now.
I think Komal should have another session. Why, Komal? then we'll hear more stories. Really, very, very, very interesting session.
Thank you,
Priya.
Auntie.
Thank you so much.
We'll definitely
I
plan
would
some
love
more.
to have another session. Yes, there is just so much so much more. Even today, when I was preparing for today, I just had to pick up a couple of things on leadership, but there was just, even on leadership, there's just so much. I mean, I really feel like Harvard and all these universities should run full courses on management just from Vedic philosophy.
Actually.
Thank you, Usha Auntie, for being a
Thank you,
part.
thank
It's so
you.
lovely to have you.
Thank you so much, Komal. Thank you, Priya. Thank you.
Thank you, Auntie.
Thank you so much, Ushaji, for bringing that question and speaking for all of us. Priya, there is one question. I don't see any questions in the audience. There is one. So we are talking about stories, and I understand that you have also written a book which speaks of extraordinary stories. Would you like to tell us what that is about, and what has been your inspiration on bringing those out? And
Thank
how
you so
can
much.
we take advantage of that?
Thank you so much for asking, Komal. It's called The Smallest Stories to Extraordinary. It was published last year. It's on Amazon bookstores in the West, in the UK and US, but in India, it's on Amazon. And it is just a very simple but magical book on true stories from everyday life that get us to rethink about what everyday life is, what joy is, and what extraordinary is. It takes you away from the world of Instagram influencers to a world where you are the influencer of your life in how you live it every day, and things that we often overlook in our everyday life that really are the influencers to our life. So again, it's called The Smallest Stories to Extraordinary. And you can also, follow me on my YouTube channel, which is Dr. Priya V, Facebook page, which is Priya Vimani. I try and share a a lot of things from Vedic philosophy, etc., just about well-being, about being a better self. Things I've shared through the global pandemic, and for AmLooks, the Instagram page is AmLooks Travel. But Komal, if with your permission, I just saw a comment from Charu Chauhan. May I respond to that, please? It says
Yes,
Mahabharata
please,
is full
definitely.
of many episodes of disrespect and revenge. That's why the war happened. Absolutely. The Mahabharata, in its essence, is a manual for all of us, and it encompasses every facet of human nature. Think of any situation or facet of human nature, whether it's homosexuality, transgender, illegitimacy, everything, the excesses, the positives, everything that forms a gamut that even today sometimes shocks us. At that point, the Mahabharata addresses and looks at. Um, Feticide, everything it looks at. And yes, so it has to be full of all this spice so that, we can look at it and see it as a mirror of relation to us and where we are and to human nature and get those insights. So yes, the human journey is full of stories of respect but also disrespect, of help but also of revenge. And therefore the Mahabharata is nothing but a metaphor for all the different, for the entire repertoire of human nature and human experience. And therefore all of this is in it.
Priya, there is a comment on the YouTube, and I'm going to read that out for you to address. Lata Paul asks, so when did the custom come that beti ke ghar ka pani bhi nahi peena hai? And she continues to say, Shakuni stayed in his sister's house for years. Would you like to shed some insight on that?
Well, then he stayed as an imposed guest. He was not welcome. Gandhari really didn't want him there. But he developed this connect with his nephew Duryodhan, and Duryodhan is the one as heir to the throne and who his parents were blindly attached to. He then, insisted that his mama is with him. But yes, he did overstay his welcome, and he was not entirely welcomed by his sister and his brother-in-law. So that custom of the maternal household being more obligated to the bride's in-laws was there even then. But this ritual of inviting them right after the marriage was very much present, mainly in royal households, not right across the hierarchy, but in royal households for the new home of the bride to show off to her parental home how lavishly and how well they can keep their woman, and to give them a taste of that, with that kind of a mindset. But yes, I do feel taking it to the extreme of ghar ka pani bhi nahi peena hai is not really what our philosophy speaks about, but something that we've played Chinese whispers with our customs, and yeah, with allowing patriarchy to come in, and setting certain norms and boundaries. But a lot of things that we practice, which we believe is coming from our sort of Vedic inheritance, is not our Vedic inheritance. It's socio-cultural practices that we have created and played Chinese whispers with, and put down the generations. Thank you for that.
Thank you, Priya, for answering our questions and giving a little relief to our curiosity. With that, I will hand over the mic to our Vice Chairperson, Anuradha Mala, to deliver the vote of thanks and felicitate.
Thank you.
Over to you, Anu.
I think Anuradha has.
Hi, good evening. Little difficulty in unmuting. I take this opportunity to express my heartfelt thanks to the enchanting speaker, I would say, Dr. Priya Vermala. You have transformed us to a different I at this point of time. And with each word, I could feel a sense of relief and a sense of lightness of being coming into me while listening to you. Thank you so much. We're so grateful. So, on behalf of Flow Uttarakhand, I thanks for the lovely evening you have given, and you have touched upon a very different but a wondrous aspect of our mythology, and we can turn each word into life lessons to be good leaders for the thing. I thank Ms. Komal Batra, our chairperson, Flow Uttarakhand, our office bearers, executive and committee members for making this evening possible. Thank you all, especially Tripti. I would also like to welcome and thank our members Flow Pan India and members of Flow Uttarakhand and guests who have been present here. Thank you for being wonderful audience, and I hope you all take a little packet of insight home today. My sincere thanks to our IT team for the smooth transfer of the proceedings digitally. Thank you so much, all. And now I would request our team to please present a rightful certificate of appreciation to the speaker for the day, Dr. Priya Virmani. I'm totally on to you. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Anuradha Mala. That was very, very lifting feedback. And I, surrender your feedback to His grace, and may His grace enable much more of, of such sessions of positivity. Thank you to the wonderful tech team, to Komal, to Anuradha ji, to each one who has joined today, and above all, to His grace that is the enabler. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks a lot. Thank you all from London. It's afternoon here, so I will get back to my working day. Bye, everyone.